how do you identify who's for you and who's not for you?
Who adds value to you?
Okay.
Who not that doesn't mean like who's just fun to hang out with, but who a friend, there's iron sharpens iron, right? A friend can encourage you, a friend can challenge you, a friend can speak truth with grace to you in a way that you can receive it. And I want to have people in my life that add value, that can make me a better dad, make me a better husband, make me a better leader.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to a conversation with Matthew. I'm Matthew Sanchez, and I am so glad. I'm so glad I can shout. I'm so glad that you chose this particular time out of your day to spend with me. Listen, my intention with every single episode that you hear on this podcast is always to plant a seed of inspiration in the hopes that it grows into your transformation. I'm all about self-development, and I'm all about encouraging people. So if you like what you've heard and you like the movement, share it. Because like Dr. Maya Angelou says, when you learn, you teach. When you get, you give. Thank you so much.
Brought to you by MSW Productions.
Well, here we are.
The day has finally come.
The day has finally come. Pastor David, okay, now, let me just say this. When I had Pastor Kyle on, he said, he made a reference. He said, thank you for welcoming me on the 30th podcast. And I was like, no, it's a flow to this thing. Like I have a flow to it.
Yeah,
so
you got a good flow.
Yeah, I'm trying to have a flow to it. You got to have different people from different walks of life. And because it's called a conversation with me, I want people to know that I just don't know one type of people. I know all types of people. So
Love it.
When I was making the list, when I started in January, I said, you know what? I've got to have Pastor David and I've got to have Mother Karen on.
Yeah.
First two people.
Love Miss Karen.
Love Mother Karen. I mean, she really is like a mother to anybody. I don't know. I think I kind of gave her the name Mother Karen because people wouldn't call her that until at least I didn't recognize it.
You coined the term Mother Karen.
It's definitely like she has such a aura about her that I just love. And I think of you when I think of like personalities and people that I can talk to all day. Because I can learn from you and sit with you and just listen and not feel like I have to say nothing back. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Man, I think that it's fun to have relationships where it's just easy.
Yeah.
And I think that so oftentimes those relationships are hard to find.
Yeah.
So it's fun to just be you, be normal, not have to be on, in on mode, so to speak.
Yeah. So I know when we walked in, first of all, your house, this is a great house.
Well, thank you. It's a blessing.
It's a nice house. Really is.
Did you notice where you walked in at?
No.
Where'd you walk in at?
The door?
The front door?
The front door, yes.
Yeah. You know why I didn't bring you in the garage?
Why?
Because all the junk is in the garage.
No, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. But it's so nice. You guys like you guys have great taste in furniture, and you guys, I don't know what it's called, feng shui or whatever. But it's nice.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's a blessing. I was telling you the story just earlier about the house and what we've been able to use it for small groups and for church and for ministry purposes.
Yeah.
So it's a great blessing.
Yeah. Well, tell me this. I know when I first got here, you said you liked my wagon.
Yeah.
And I gave you a story. I told you a story on how I got most of the equipment that I've been able to receive. And the purpose of me telling you the story is that because I ended it by saying that it was something that God blessed because I was consistent in it.
Yeah.
And because I was consistent, God kind of endorsed it in a better words.
Yeah.
Could have done it a lot sooner. But
God is never late. He's never early.
Right.
He is right on time.
It was right on time.
Yeah.
Can you tell me the importance for the first official question from Pastor David White, ladies and gentlemen? If
That
they didn't know.
sounds so official.
Well, they didn't know your last name. I just want Pastor David White.
Yeah, most people call me David.
Oh, David. David White, ladies and
There you
gentlemen,
go.
David White.
Plain and simple.
Can you tell me the importance of timing and how God works and how my timing may be different from his time and how important it is to identify, okay, I'm just going to wait. I'm just going to be still.
Yeah. Man, being still is so hard.
It is. It is. It's frustrating.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And you get tired of sitting still.
Right.
We're in this society where everything is on the go. Everything is fast. Everything's quick. You know, we can order something on our phone and it's there the very next day. And
That's true.
I think, you know, is what I was sharing with you. I think that it's, you know, God's timing is always perfect. And I think we can't ask why. We can't ask why not now. But it's just to truly trust everything in our lives. And when it comes to timing, I think there's certain seasons where you want something or you desire something. And if you're wanting it and you're not receiving it, you have to trust that God is not in it yet. Or maybe he's in it, but yet it's not his timing.
Yeah, that's good.
You know, I think a blessing in one season can actually be a curse in another season. So for instance, say you're Matthew, 16 years old.
Come on, I'm 16.
And somebody, right, you received that. And somebody's like, hey, I'm going to give you $100,000.
Okay.
And as a 16-year-old, as Matthew, you might steward that a certain way. You might have been a lot more, you might have been better prepared than I was at 16. If I got $100,000 in a season where I wasn't ready to receive it, I'd probably go buy a car.
Yeah.
I would go buy a lot of food, some fun stuff, you know, and I would just blow that money.
Yeah.
But now if I receive that same amount of money, that same blessing in a different season of life, say right now where I have, you know, a daughter and that's 12, that's in middle school, a first grader who's 7, like I'm going to steward that money differently. And it's going to be a tremendous blessing for me in this season where I would have squandered it in another season.
That makes sense.
And I think that, you know, I can set up, you know, I can fund my Roth IRA, I can fund their schooling, I can do so much with that blessing in this season, whereas I would have squandered it in the previous season. I think that, you know, whenever somebody's believing for a blessing and believing for something, and I think that they also have to wait for God's perfect timing for it, whether that's in a marriage, whether it's a relationship, whether that's a child, whatever the case may be. Everybody has their blank that they can fill in. But just, I think it all boils back down to trust and just trusting God's timing in it.
How do you trust God? How do you trust a God that some people have had a bad relationship with?
I think
that's a loaded question.
That is a loaded question.
That's a loaded question.
I think, how can you not trust God? I think is a better question. Because I think that if you don't have a good relationship with him, it is, you're looking through the wrong lens. Maybe you were looking through a worldly lens. Maybe how your father was, or maybe a father figure was.
That's good.
Maybe because you don't know the God or the Father that so many have experienced. And I think it's hard to trust someone you don't know. So the best thing to do, first of all, is come to know who God is. And if you know him, you can trust him.
See, this is why I wanted to sit down with you, because it's your approach and your ideology of things.
I don't even know what that means.
I don't know either. It sounds fancy though.
It does. I like it.
It means something about idea and the way you think. That's all I know.
That's great.
But don't it sound fancy? Yeah, just
does.
use it in a sentence and be like, wow, that man went to college.
I'm going to try to work that in. I'm going to work that word in the rest of this interview.
Okay. Yeah, but this is why I wanted to sit down with you, because it's your approach of things that make it so... I don't know. There's just something about you, Pastor David, and I know it's got to be the God in you and who you have become.
Becoming.
Yeah. It's something special about you that anybody I'd ask or anybody I have a conversation with. Like I was telling Megan and Walter and Karen and Genesis that I was interviewing you, and they were like, "Oh, I love Pastor David. I love Pastor David." And every now and then, so the people who are listening, they don't know that I'm in Highlands College, and you're kind of like the principal.
Yeah, the principal.
You're the principal.
Man,
okay, so dean
love
of
it.
Highlands College, well, the Columbus campus.
Sure.
And every now and then, you would come to class, and somebody ask you a question, and you give a whole word, and we're like, "Wow, you know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I get most of those reactions from you, not everybody, but
okay. So I guess what I'm asking you is, how have you become who you are today?
How have I become the person I am today?
Yeah. How did that happen?
Truly through relationships. My mom prayed for me a whole lot growing up, and so did my dad.
Yeah.
And there was a season of my life that, man, if you knew, it would. I mean, I sat down with a guy the other day and had lunch with him. Told him, you always have your testimony ready.
For sure.
Whether it's a 60-second, a 60-minute, or somewhere in between.
For sure.
You got to use discernment in those opportunities with people. But I shared, a portion of my testimony with them, and there was a season where I had the right people in my life, my family, the importance, my grandmother, my aunts, my uncles, my brother.
Yeah.
And then there was a season where I got away from family. And there was a season where I started doing David's thing, my own thing. It's kind of like the prodigal son story where he went off. He's like, I think that I know what's best. I'm going to go find out for myself.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I got some healthy relationships in my life that wanted the best for me. Like, they wanted the best for me. I have friends that can call that out, that can speak to it and say, hey, you're spending too much time or thoughts. Like, you're doing too much of this. And they can actually see things in you that you don't see in yourself, because everybody has blind spots.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I think that what I've been able to do over the past, I'd say 11 years, which is when I first walked into Church of the Highlands, was to start building some healthy relationships. And those relationships, you show me your friends.
And I'll show you who you are.
It's so true. Like,
that's
and
good.
I think that oftentimes we're like, I can hang out with these people and it doesn't affect me. But does it really?
Oh, come on. You preaching on something now.
But that's good. It's one thing to say it. It's another thing to walk it out. So I think that that doesn't mean.
But how do you, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you just made me, I don't want to lose that spot. How do you identify who's for you and who's not for you?
Who adds value to you?
Okay.
Who not, that doesn't mean like who's just fun to hang out with, but who, a friend, there's iron sharpens iron, right? A friend can encourage you. A friend can challenge you. A friend can speak truth with grace to you in a way that you can receive it. And I want to have people in my life that add value, that can make me a better dad, make me a better husband, make me a better leader.
Which is hard to do for some people, because they think they got it together. They think that they don't need no help. They got it. They're just figured out along the way.
Yeah. Well, I think that the one, like, you've got to realize, hey, I've got to have people in my life. It's kind of, I had somebody describe it as like a diamond formation the other day. You always have somebody in front of you that you're aspiring to be, someone that can lead you, that can speak into you, that can encourage you, that can sharpen you. And for me, that's Pastor Kyle. I'm so thankful for his relationship. He's such an authentic, real friend. But then you have two people beside you, and who is kind of in the same season of life. It's just nice. It's easy. It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier, that it's just, there's a natural flow to the relationship.
Yeah.
And then always have somebody in your life that is behind you, that you can help lead and encourage and kind of set the example for themselves. And so that diamond formation that you have in your life, that same person behind you can have as well. And it can just affect a lot of people that way.
So the relationships in your life helped who you are today, is what you're saying.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I wanted to have a better, healthier marriage. I wanted to be a better parent. So what did I do? I joined a marriage small group. I joined a parenting small group. And some of the best friends in my entire life led those groups, poured into me, prayed for me. But I think that you can go to these things. You can go to church. You can go to small group. You can go into these environments and leave unchanged if your heart is not there, and your willingness to be vulnerable and true.
I was just telling, we're leading a small group. I and Genesis and Megan and Walter and Karen.
Do you want to do a shameless plug for it right here? What night is it? What day is it? Where's it at?
Well, we got a lot of people
link
now.
In bio.
We got a lot of people now. We would love more people, but we got to have more room.
Yeah.
But I was just telling them Thursday that like, I think the biggest problem for young people, maybe it's not a problem, maybe it's just something they're confused about, is that they're so quick to get into small groups or just environments that are good for them, but they have a hard time soaking it up. You know, that makes sense?
Yeah.
Or being present for the moment. So they just go, when it's over, they just go right back to their old ways.
Yeah.
What is that? What are you, based off of your experience with people, why does that happen to the majority of young people or just people in general? They get into something good, maybe like therapy, or they go to something, and then they go right back to what they used to do.
Yeah.
Based off of your experience, what do you?
I don't know. I guess so much of my life right now, God's revealing to me that pride blocks a lot of things for a lot of people, myself included.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we think pride is arrogance or it's being boastful. But pride is always just thinking about yourself. So wondering what other people are thinking about you, wanting to be liked. And it's just, you're always making it about you. And I think that sometimes when people go into these environments, they don't have a proper view of themselves, or maybe they like, I don't need that. And they just kind of dismiss it. But again, they don't have the people in their lives that they can trust. And I think trust takes time. Like trust takes time. Like I had my very first small group, which was a basketball small group.
Oh, you played basketball?
I played basketball.
Are you good?
Yeah, and
Are you
I was all right. I was a point guard, so I just passed. You know, I passed and played defense.
Okay.
I wasn't the best shot. You know, give me a layup and I'll make it. But,
Oh, okay. Now look, now I can't challenge you in that because
Yeah.
I'm a tennis player.
You
know?
tennis?
Yeah, I play tennis. I do a little bit of, that's it.
Tennis.
I can walk though. I can
Walk with the best of them.
I can. If we race and walking,
Yeah.
I probably could beat you.
You better watch out. I got the Disney World walk down.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a challenge.
We can't make all the rides in one day if we ain't moving. So,
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
bro, I completely lost my train of
No,
thought.
you say that your first small group, it took you, because you were talking about how trust takes time to build.
Yeah.
So your first small group, go ahead. You started with that.
And again, like, why do people walk into these environments and leave unchanged?
Yeah.
So that basketball small group, for 13 weeks, I went. But to look at the first week to the last week, I would say that there's nothing much has changed in my life. But I was getting around the right people. And that step led to a next step, which was asking my wife, saying, hey, I joined my first small group. I think it would be fun for us to do something together, which then led to a next step to a parenting small group.
Right.
And in that small group, you know, the enemy will, in any environment.
Oh God, come on.
The enemy will just distract you.
Oh,
He'll begin to eat your lunch. Like, hey,
Especially
you
if
don't
it's
need
good.
that. This is frustrating. Even in the people in those environments can begin to frustrate you. Because we had a 6-month-old, but the people in the small group were talking about, man, I'm dealing with my teenager and they're texting and my child's talking back to me.
And I ain't
so
got
we
nothing to
left.
do with that.
And so we left. We're like, what is it? Is this adding value to us? We don't have anything in common with them. Like, why? And so he began to just seed these lies to where, like, just trying to discourage us from going back. But we didn't, because we had people in our life that said, hey, keep going back, keep going, keep pushing in. And I think that for us, it was like, well, we don't need that. And again, it was pride. It was, we're not getting what they're trying to share.
Yeah, for sure.
So a lot of things in my life specifically, and a lot of people, I think, unfortunately, are just blinded by a sense of pride where they think that they don't want it, but they actually need it.
And the hardest part is to getting there that I need it.
Yeah.
Okay, so Pastor David, you're a pastor.
But I also think, hold on just a second. Because
Go,
I think
come on, let's go.
It takes time. Like, my very first small group was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I kept going back, and it was every semester, and it was multiple groups. And, I think that going back to what we were talking about earlier about this mentality, this microwave mentality where things just have to happen quickly.
Yeah.
The disciples, they walked with Jesus for years. Every minute, every day, every hour, like, they were with him constantly.
Yeah.
Up until the very last day, and even until that time, they missed it.
Yeah.
So to think that we're different than them, they were just as human as you and I. They had the same, misconceptions about things. They had the same pride. They had the same insecurities. But they were in the presence of Jesus, and they still battled with these fleshly, this flesh mindset. So I just think that people give up too quickly. And I think that, it does take time for God for you to begin to see change and for others to be able to see change in your life, because everybody sees Pastor David now.
Yeah.
And, there's a process that we walk out and we become a little bit more like Jesus every day. And some days we're, one step backwards, but we're still moving forward. Our heart is still pointed in the right direction. So I think that, we just got to get in this mindset of just being steadfast and not quitting and continuing, even when it gets hard, even when you get distracted.
Yeah.
And boy, there are so many distractions.
Yeah.
The job, the finances, the
all
families,
of that,
the kids.
Of that, right.
And those politics right now.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. You're distracted, you're divided, and what the enemy can divide, he can conquer, whether that be in a marriage, whether that be in a church, whether that be in a relationship.
Yeah.
So I think it all
boils down to trust.
It boils down to trust and relationships.
Patience.
Yeah.
Patience, really.
Sticking it through.
Yeah. Which is hard for some people just to get through because they want it right now or they assume that it's going to happen overnight. And I heard a statement one time that said the same amount of time it took you to get into the mess that you're in, it's going to be the same amount of time to get you to get out of it.
Yeah.
And
I heard that yesterday, and it was about Auburn football. No joke. No joke. We're so coming from an Auburn fan, I know there's Georgia fans, Alabama, all kinds of fans, but it's like, man, we didn't ruin it in one day, and we're not going to rebuild it in one day either. But that's so true in relationships.
It is. So speaking of relationships, you are who you are today because of the relationships in your life.
Yeah.
And today you are a pastor to many. You're the leader of our small groups at our campus at Church of the Highlands. And you are a father, a husband. How did you get to pastor? Because you were doing insurance.
Yeah.
So how do you come from insurance?
I won't say what company
pastor?
I was with.
Yeah, don't say.
Yeah, because it's not endorsed.
Yeah. Well, they can if they want to. Reach out to us, please.
That's
How did you go from insurance to pastor? Like, what was that transition like? And I guess what I'm asking is, what would you say to somebody who is like battling, well, I don't want to do this no more. I know God has called me to something more.
Yeah.
Based off of your experience in your life, how does that happen for you?
Man, I think it goes back to the people that I had in my life. God put some people in my life that could speak into it. And it just, those relationships not only formed who I was, but they also laid out the path for which God had for me.
Yeah.
And honestly, Matthew, I still have to pinch myself because I'm very honored. It's such a joy to be able to do this.
Yeah.
I don't think I deserve it. This isn't false humility because I don't.
Yeah.
I know me. And I think that is an honor to be chosen. And we have all been chosen. The Bible says we all have gifts. And so it's ours to steward those gifts because we all have plans that God laid out in advance for us to do. God has the good works for us to do. So he didn't create us and then create the works. He created the opportunities for us in advance. And he's like, hey, Matthew's going to do this.
That's good.
David's going to do
That's
this.
Good.
And, for me, it's to never get in this place where I deserve it or I know what's best. I think of it as the seat that I'm sitting in right now and you're sitting in right now.
Yeah.
This is my seat. But the position that I am is not my seat. It's my seat to steward. So I want to steward this seat, this position, wherever you're at.
Good.
In insurance, I started, at the very base level, but I'm like, I want to steward that position well, and I'm going to leave it better than when I found it. And so wherever you find yourself in whatever season you are, praise God for what you have to steward, because everything good comes from him, right?
Yeah.
Our influence, our time, our resources, the influence that we have with the relationships around us.
Yeah.
Let's steward that well. And if you're trusted with a little, he's going to trust you with more. And so it is, for me, I was in the right relationships. I was going to church. I had gone through, these different groups and allowed myself to grow in relationship with Jesus. And somebody saw a gift that they called out. He's like, David, man, you're pretty good with people. And in the insurance business, people have to buy insurance.
They do.
Like, you can't ride around in a car without it. I mean, you can, but you get in trouble, right?
Oh, yeah. You get
so for me, it was easy to sell a product that people were forced to buy. They just had to like me and they had to trust me, and I had to have a good product. And where I'm at now, I have the opportunity to build trust with people and to tell them what God has done in my life. And, you know, we're not selling a product, but we are telling someone that everybody has a piece of God inside of them. And that's how God wired them. And everybody has a piece of them that wants to come to know him.
Yeah.
And so I just get the opportunity to share my journey of what it looked like to come to know him.
Yeah.
And it draws people in.
Yeah.
And so from the insurance world to working in
Pastor.
church, I look at it as what an incredible opportunity it is to love and serve God
For sure.
alongside so many others. And I think that there is the fivefold ministry, right? There's pastors, teachers, preachers, evangelists, and prophets.
Right.
But I also think that every small group leader is a pastor, is a shepherd in its own sense.
Yeah.
You're caring for people. You're praying for people. You're encouraging people. You're sharing scripture with them. You're not fixing their problems, but you're pointing them to Jesus.
You're not their God.
No, you're not.
You're not their God, but you.
And you will never be able to fix people's problems.
Right. That's good, especially for leaders.
But Jesus can, and that's for an individual to be able to hear that. You are not the answer to people's problems. Jesus is, but you have a opportunity to point them. You're a vessel, and you have the opportunity to redirect them to the person who can change their life.
As a person who travels a lot during the year, especially doing this podcast, I know you can only imagine how much service my car needs. And let me tell you, every time my car needs something, I take it right down to Veterans Parkway, Columbus, Georgia, at my friend Kevin at Innovative Automotive. Not only are they so welcoming and great with hospitality, but they're so intentional on how and what they do to your car. I never feel like that there's something that needs to be done after they have seen or taken care of my car. So please, if there's anything that your car needs, they do it all, from air conditioning to tire changes to oil changes to a lot of things they do. You have to go to their website and see what they do. But give them a call at 706-653-6566. Innovative Automotive is where I take my car, and I think that you should too. Now back to this conversation, Pastor David. Back to obedience, because I really want you to kind of unpack that. Can you share a little bit more about obedience, what it looks like, and how effective it can be in our lives? Because you kind of referenced it in the beginning of our conversation, but I really want you to dig into it a little bit, because a lot of people struggle with that. And I know it is.
Why is obedience so hard?
But you know what? I don't know why it's hard, because for me, I think obedience is just when you hear God's voice, do it.
Are you doing it because he told you to do it? Or are you doing it? Which heart are you doing it out of?
Right. So like, I'll give you an example, and then I know you want to say something too.
Yeah.
Let's say God just tells me to voice text people about just crazy stuff. I can be singing a song to them, or just messaging them, tell them I love them. Yeah. And every response, and I know
I needed this today.
Every response is, I don't know how you knew, but I needed this today.
Yep.
To me, that's obedience.
Yeah.
Now, to some people that may be small, but to me, that's big. That's what obedience looks like.
Well, I think it's that, man, our God is a God of the small and the big. So no matter what task, and I actually have a story that's kind of fun. So earlier throughout the year, twice a year, we do 21 days of prayer.
Right.
And this was during the January season where it was 21 days of prayer and fasting.
Right.
So your boy was losing some weight. And
I fell off my bike.
But I was downtown, and I was getting out of my car, and I was just cleaning up some trash in my car, and I had a water bottle, and I was getting ready to throw the water bottle away, and the top of it came off and landed on the ground. And so here I am trying to run in and grab a juice real quick so I can make it to an appointment that I had. But then the Holy Spirit was like, "Hey, go pick that up." And I was like, No. I've got to go.
I'm running late. I got to go.
I'm busy.
Sorry.
And there's so much trash on the ground. I was
And once you see one piece, you got to pick up another piece.
Yeah,
another piece.
And I was justifying in my mind why I did not have to do that.
Right.
Because of so many other factors.
Yeah.
And so the second time he was like, go back and pick that up and throw it away. I reluctantly was like, fine, I'm just talking to myself. And so I go back and I pick up the green water bottle.
I do that all the time, by the way.
And I threw it in the trash. And when I threw it in the trash, I looked and I saw that there was a $5 bill in the trash. Dude, like perfectly sitting on top of the trash can.
Wow.
And I'm like, praise God, I'm going to get my juice paid for. So I grabbed the $5 bill and then I'm walking back. I'm like, man, this is so cool. He told me to throw away the trash, and I listened, so I get blessed with $5. And then all of a sudden I get prompted again. It's like, that's not for you, that's for him. And I looked over and I saw a homeless guy on the sitting on the bench. And I was like, but God, this is my free juice today. It's like, again, I'm wrestling with God on like what to do with this.
Yeah.
And so I went back to my car and I got a little card that says just a little something extra to show you that Jesus loves you. And I walked over to the guy and I asked him for his name. And I don't remember his name, but I just remember him looking at me and I'm just like, hey, God told me to give you this. And I don't know what that did for that guy that day. But I know it did a lot more than getting me a free juice would do in the moment.
Right.
And I think that we have so many opportunities to be obedient. The provision's already there. That $5 bill was already there, but the provision in our life is already there. We just have to be obedient in order to have our eyes open to it, to be able to see the provision that's there. And then we have the opportunity for that provision to lead to blessing for someone else. Would have been a blessing to me? Sure. But the blessing was probably a bigger blessing for the other individual. And I think that there's so many opportunities in life where we have to be obedient that opens our eyes to the provision to be a blessing to somebody.
I think in order to be obedient, you have to
Well, you have to be able to listen, don't you?
You got to be able to listen, and you got to be able to have a little faith.
Yeah.
That God's going to do it. God's going to.
How do you listen? This is a question for you. How do you listen in a world that's noisy? There's so much noise.
Wow, that's a really good question. Wow. How do you listen in a world that's noisy? I think based off of how I have listened is I count out the noise that doesn't matter. Because not all noise is bad, because you want to know what's going on, so you know how to pray, you know how to move effectively as a person who loves God. But there's some stuff it's just toxic, man.
At the end of the day, it don't matter.
It don't matter. It's just toxic. Some of that stuff is just garbage, honestly. And oftentimes, now we can go into a deep rabbit hole with this one. Oftentimes, the trash and the negative is in our own heads about ourselves, which is why we don't think that God can use us. We don't think that we're qualified for it. We don't have faith. Yeah, which kind of constructs how we spiritually grow. And
oftentimes people are their own worst enemy.
Most of the time. I'm telling you.
Yeah, the negative self-talk, and it goes back to words, man. There's so much power. There's life and death in the power of the tongue. Yeah. And so words have, going through a process.
I used to underestimate words. I did.
Man, how often you're either adding to or taking away. A hammer, your tongue is like a hammer, right? You can either build something up with that hammer or you can tear something down with that hammer.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think that it's what an opportunity we have every day to speak life, not only into others' lives, but also to believe God's truth about us and the way that we think about ourselves. Because our emotions are everywhere, man.
Exactly. And if we don't have a container for them, you can doctor this up for me. If we don't have a container for them, then they'll just they'll go everywhere.
So we're triune beings, right? Triune.
Okay, yes, come on.
Body, soul, and spirit.
Right.
So our body, our physical body, if you starve it, it gets loud, right? My tummy will start rumbling. If I don't have my caffeine, my head's going to hurt. Like, it's going to tell you what to do.
Right.
Then we also have a soul, which is our mind, our will, and our emotions. Yeah. So if we're being emotionally led, we're being led by the things around us. Yeah. Like, you're going to allow feelings to lead you, those feelings will fail you every day.
For sure.
And I see so many people being led by their bodies and what they want to do, and like, hey, this is what I like. This feels good. I'm going to do it. But we're either led by our bodies, we're led by our emotions. And is your day, whether you're having a good day or a bad day, is based on external circumstances. And even what we just learned recently in one of the church services is, our peace is not bound or is not, it is not external circumstances that brings us peace. It's the presence of God that brings that peace in our lives. So we can't be led, we're triune beings. We can't be led by our body. We can't be led by our soul.
Right.
But we have to be led by our spirit.
Yeah.
And our spirit, if it gets unfed, if we're not reading the Bible, if we're not in church, if we're not worshiping.
I'm just going to ask you, how do you do that? How do you feed your spirit?
If we're not feeding our spirit, the spirit does the opposite of the body. Because the body gets loud when it gets starved, but the spirit gets quiet when it gets starved. So I think to be able to hear the prompting of the Holy Spirit, which we all as believers have inside of us, that's a helper, that's a comforter. And that's something that actually I never learned about a lot growing up, was we never talked about the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
It was a foreign concept. Our God is a triune God, but we're triune beings. We're created in his image, right? So he gave us a helper. He gave us a comforter. And who would not need a best friend on this planet to do this life with?
Right.
And so when we learn to hear God's voice, we have to be feeding our spirit in order to be able to hear him in a world that's crazy distracting all around us.
Speaking of faith, we talked about faith in order to be obedient and spiritual growth. What is faith to you?
Man,
In your own definition, what is faith?
that's such a deep question.
Okay.
Faith. So what does the Bible say about faith? Faith without works is what?
Dead.
Yeah. So I think that for me, it's putting my faith into action. It's action behind what we read and what we learn in the Bible.
So faith is action?
Yeah. I mean, in simplest definition, I guess.
Yeah, that's good. That was good. How can faith help us in times of trial or times that are tough? Like if you had the phone number to every person who was struggling in the world, struggling with their faith or just struggling to keep faith, like how important it is. How can you give some advice or how important it is to maintain it? That makes sense?
Yeah, honestly, man, I didn't even hear your question because I'm thinking about just that, because faith is an action. I think so that definition that we set up initially probably isn't 100% accurate by any means and can be deconstructed. But I truly don't know what people do, because in this world, we will have trials.
That's true.
Jesus said we're going to have these things that come in our way, whether it's health or relationships or life or death. Or,
he didn't say when they would come, but he did say there will be times of trouble.
He said they're coming.
Yeah.
And I truly don't know how people go through these things without having faith. And for me, I think faith is the people around you. Obviously, the faith in God, it comes from a relationship. I didn't see where this chair was manufactured, right?
Yeah, right.
I didn't know the details about it. I didn't see who made it.
Right.
But I had faith in order to sit in it, knowing that it would hold me up. I think so. Is for me, I think that just knowing and trusting, having childlike faith, not asking how or why, because we want to know everything. And I think that if we have a God that we can fit inside of our brain, then that's not a God that I want to follow or believe in.
That's good.
But there have been seasons where I've needed my relationships. I've needed God to move in my life. I've had sick kids and they've been in the hospital. And the only person that's texting me is my mom and dad. And I felt so alone. I felt so isolated. I felt helpless.
Yeah.
And I'm praying to God, because I'm in a season of desperation. And I think that that's what a lot of people do is when they need God, they reach out, and he's always there.
Right.
They just don't know it because they're not listening to him, because they're not in relationship with him.
Right.
And relationship takes time. It takes trust. So But I've also been in another season of life with my other child in the hospital, and I am overwhelmed with the amount of prayers, the amount of text, the amount of encouragement and prayers that are going up on my behalf. That's even strengthened my faith in those seasons.
Yeah.
And so can people make it on this planet without having faith? I think is a question that so many people, it's like, can you have a healthy marriage without God in it? Like I've had people like, well, you know, they've been married for 50 years and they're not followers of Christ. Yeah, but you're missing out on the best life possible.
Right.
Like there's so much that you're missing out on by not having faith in your life. Like, did I get through that hospital stay with my oldest child without being plugged into church and really growing a relationship with God? I wouldn't say my faith was strong in that season. Yeah, we got through it. But man, in the other season where I did have a firm foundation of faith, where I did have healthy relationships, where I was, you know, in a healthier season, spiritually speaking, that season was so much better and easier to handle because I had something to hold on to.
Yeah. Wow. That's good. I don't even have a follow-up question to that because that was so, I thought that was so well said. What would you say for one of the last questions? What would you say to somebody who wants to know God, but is because of they don't have enough experience, or they've never been to church, or they've never had friends that know God? What would you say to them? Like, how would you, if somebody's far from God, what would you say to them that wants to be close to God?
Don't you want to know him? You know, I've heard Pastor Chris, our senior pastor at our church, say, I know you might not know him or you don't believe in him, but don't you miss him?
But what if they have?
Bro, I think that there's so many opportunities around us every day. We just don't see it.
Okay, now can you give me an example?
To reach people.
Okay.
To reach people. So what, do I just go up to people and stand on the street corner and preach in the gospel? Like, yeah,
some people have done that.
The world needs to know Jesus, but is it effective? Is it effective to tell people that they're going to hell for their sins? Yes, that's right, but we're not called to be right. We're called to be effective. We're called to be kingdom builders. We're called to be disciples.
That's good.
And you can't win an enemy to Christ. So what do? You slow down with them and you say, hey, tell me your name.
You build relationship with them.
I love this. I watched this a clip online the other day, and the premise of it was everybody has a story. And it was in a restaurant, and it showed, you know, a picture of someone, and then it gave a little short blurb about what they were going on in their life. You know, it showed an older woman who was today would have been her 50th anniversary, but her husband passed last year. It showed a picture of a young girl who was struggling to get her way to provide for her college. It showed another single mom with kids in the restaurant. It was like, this is a single mom who lost her husband. And so everybody has a story. I think it's just having the lens because that's what Jesus did, having the lens and the eyes to be able to see people the way that Jesus did. So I think that when you can see people, you can slow down, you can listen to them, listen before you speak.
That's good.
And when you come in a place of humility, in a place of like, hey, you know, tell me what's going on, or when you see somebody crying, say, hey, just love on them and encourage them, you know. And I think that there's places where you can just slow down with people, and when you're kind and you love people, it will lead them to like, hey, why are you talking to me? Why are you giving me this? Why did you buy my coffee?
That's good.
Why did you stop and give me this? Because Jesus loves you. Well, how do you like come and see? That's what Jesus said. He said, follow me. Come and see. And I think that we have so many opportunities where we can, I think we can't love, it's impossible to love people if we don't love God. That's our vision statement as a church. We love God, therefore we can love people. And when we love people, when we slow down, when we listen, when we reach them and point them in the right direction, it's so fun to be a part of. I think that oftentimes we just get busy with the jobs, with the vacation, with providing, with
schedule,
the schedules that we forget that we're here on mission. And I missed that mission
That's
for
so
25 plus years.
That's so big. Yeah.
And you have the same amount of time as I do.
Yeah.
You also have the option to fill that time with whatever you want to. And
I think that's the only reason why we're here. I mean,
why else would we be here?
Right. I mean, I think it's great that we can make a bunch of money and give some away, have children, do this and live in a nice house and all that. But I think the only reason why we're here is to share the gifts that we have and love people like we've never been hurt.
And once you catch that,
that's good.
Then life has meaning. Then life has purpose.
Then you can find the gift that you, or the calling that is on your life.
Absolutely.
Wow. Pastor Dave, that's really good because I always speak about that, especially with some of my friends of how do you minister to somebody, how do you present God to somebody who doesn't know or doesn't believe what you believe. And I'm always in the sense of, man, let's build a relationship with them first.
Yes.
We don't have to condemn them.
Truth and grace.
Yeah.
Truth
that's
and
good.
grace.
That's good.
Because truth without grace, this is not a term that I've coined. Truth without grace is mean. Grace without truth is meaningless.
Okay. That's good.
Truth without grace is mean.
Yeah.
Grace without truth is meaningless. So it's got to be both. So if somebody's far from God, do you have to tell them truth? Sure. Do you have to show them grace? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because one without the other is ineffective.
That's good. That's good. Would you say it's how you tell them the truth that matters too, and what tone you say it, and maybe in what level of relationship you have
It's
with
like
them?
I tell my kids all the time. It's not what you say; it's how you say it.
Okay.
I think that it's coming with a way. Whenever you're talking with somebody, is you're not coming, looking through the lens of pride, or judging them.
Yeah.
It is just coming to them with humility and love, because where else in the world are they being approached like that? They're not getting it at work. They're not getting it, or most places, they're not getting it from the world. So if they encounter something that is countercultural, then it's like, ooh, that's a shiny, like, I want that.
Right, and you don't have to be a pastor or to go to ministry school or to do you could be as you are right now.
Please catch this.
You can do that.
Yes.
You can give someone a listening ear. You can do that.
Everybody can listen. Everyone can love. Everyone can smile. And I love that you've talked on this before. Like, a smile does so much for people.
I'm telling you.
Like when you walk and then you just smile and say, "Hey, it's good to see you. I hope you have a good day."
It's so powerful. So powerful.
I stopped. There was a lady in Burger King drive-thru the other day, and she was wearing a mask, and I could just tell she was smiling. I said,
"Through the mask,
through the mask." And I'm like, and I told her, I was like, "I can tell you have the most beautiful smile, even though I can't see it." And she said, "Man, you made my day."
See,
what did that cost me?
Nothing.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely
good.
Nothing.
That's good, Pastor David. Really, thank you for sharing this time with me. I hope and pray that people got something. Last words. What do you want to say? How do you want people to feel? And then what do you want them to do?
I don't want them to, I hope they feel encouraged. I hope they maybe feel challenged in some ways.
Yeah.
But more than a feeling, I hope that they can come to know God and experience God the way that I've experienced him. And I am so far from perfect, Matthew.
Yeah.
We all are.
Yeah.
But we're real, we're vulnerable, we're authentic, and we're all trying to be a little bit more like Jesus every day. And I've been on this journey, for the faith journey, for a long time. And I hopefully have a long way to go.
Yeah.
So I just want to encourage people to not give up. I want to encourage people to give God a chance. I want to encourage people to lean in and experience God in a fresh new way, and experience the hope and joy that comes from Jesus Christ.
I hope that's what they did listening to this. Love you.
Love you.
That was good. Wow. My friend, how do you feel? Like, tell me, because I want to know how you felt in this conversation. Write in the comments. Tell me how you felt. My intention on bringing every episode to you is that not only it inspires you, but you learn something. Like Maya Angelou said, who I love so much. She says, when you get, you give. When you learn, you teach. So if you learned something, do me a huge favor, my friend, and share it to somebody that you know needs to hear it. I'm so glad, I really am glad that you got to join on this conversation, and I can't wait until you hear the next one. Listen, God bless you. Stay in peace so that you won't be in broken pieces.